Hi STAIR students, my name is Miss Asher and this is lesson 10 of Unit 3 in your writing journal. So I think you guys are going to enjoy today's activity because we are actually going to be creating our very own 6-panel comic strip. So a comic is really just a story that's told with both words and pictures. So we're going to be creating our own characters and we're going to be drawing them and then adding dialogue in speech bubbles to our comic in order to create our story. So because it's a story, you want to have a defined beginning, middle, and end, just like you would if you were writing this whole thing out. So before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and walk you through the steps of writing a comic strip, which have been adapted from Jeff Kinney, the author of the very popular comic book series Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which I read when I was little, and I highly recommend if you guys like reading funny things. It's very funny. So these 5 steps, the first one is think of an idea. So I'm gonna tell you guys about some ideas in a minute, so that's our step number 1, and we'll get to that in a minute after I read the whole 5 steps. So step number 2 is going to be to plan your story. Like I said a minute ago, this is just another type of writing a story, so you're going to want to have that beginning, a middle, and an end, just like if you were writing a regular story. So step number 3 is going to be to keep your drawings simple. It doesn't need to be complicated. You can even keep them in black and white and draw stick figures if that's what you're most comfortable with. Just as long as your audience, the people who are going to be reading and seeing your comic, can tell what's going on, that's all you need. They don't need to be fancy. And so number 4 is going to be to use speech bubbles, which I'll show you how to do in a minute, but speech bubbles are just going to be those bubbles in a comic strip that go by the characters' mouths to tell you who's talking, and that's what they normally do in comic books. And then number 5 is just going to be to give it a title. So remember that because this is a story, just like any other story, you want to make sure you've got a title that makes sense and sort of tells your reader what they're about to read. So now that we've gone through those 5 steps, let's go ahead and do number 1, which is to think of an idea. So I've got a list of story starters. You should have them too on this page, which is lesson 10 in your writing journal. So some of these story starters, let's read them. It says, a day in the life of blank. The lost sock. I wonder if blank. I wish I had a blank. Travel to a mysterious place. A day at school. Making wishes come true. If I had $1 million, and if I lived in the future. So maybe me reading those story starters, maybe a little light bulb in your head popped off and you thought of a good story based on one of those story starters. Or maybe you'd like to write your own based on your own idea, not based on one of these, and that is totally fine too. In fact, I'm not going to be using a story starter. I actually had my own idea, which is going to be what my cats do when I'm not home. So the comic that I'm going to be writing is about what the cats do when I'm gone. And I'm going to try to make it funny. I think that they might get into some trouble and act a little crazy as soon as I walk out the door. So now hopefully you have had some time to think about what your story is going to be about, and now we are ready to start planning. So like I said, my story is going to start when I leave. It's going to be about what happens when I leave. So for our beginning, which is going to be our first strip, our first panel, remember this is a 6-panel comic, which means there are going to be 6 different pictures we're going to draw. So I thought it would make sense to have picture 1 be the beginning. The middle part is going to be pictures 2 through 5, and then our last picture is going to be the end of our story, number 6. So for the beginning, I think what would make sense, since our story is going to be about what happens when the cats are home alone, so I think it would make sense if the first part of the story is me leaving. So for our beginning, our strip number 1, I'm just going to write me leaving home. So I'm out the door. Okay, so now that I've established what's going to be in my first square of my 6-square comic, what is going to happen in the middle? So in the middle, that's going to be the bulk of our story, is what all is going to happen while I'm away. So I think it would make sense, let's see, I think for number 2, our second picture, after I leave, I think the cats are going to go up to the window and they're going to check to make sure I'm actually gone. So I'll put, for number 2, look out the window to check that I'm gone. Okay, so once they look out the window, what do you think is going to happen next? I think that they are going to realize it's party time. So the human left, mom is gone, and now it's party time. So for my third picture, my third frame of my comic, I'm just going to write party time, because remember that this is just our planning phase, our brainstorming, so it can be really simple, just like we did with those last drafts. So wow, I'm already halfway through my comic. I'm going to need 3 more ideas for 3 more pictures, and then we can go ahead and get started with our drawing and writing our dialogue. So once the cats have their little party, they realize it's party time, I think they're going to have a race. So for number 4, I'm just going to write "let's race!" exclamation point. Because I think the cats, they're going to get the zoomies, they're going to run around and go zoom. So far they look out the window, they see I'm gone, they say party time, let's have a race. And then what else are the cats going to do in the last part of our middle section of the comic? So before we get to the end, we have one more thing that the cats are going to do before we think about our ending. I think that the cats are going to break something, because cats like to break things. They like to knock things off of high places, and so I think that that's what they're going to do in this last section of our middle part. So break stuff. Okay, so let's look at what we've got so far. In the beginning of our story, it's just going to be a picture of me leaving home and maybe saying bye cats. In the middle, they're going to look out the window to check that I'm really not there anymore. And then when they realize I'm gone, they're going to say, party time! They're going to have a race, and then they're going to break some stuff. And then, how do you think our story is going to end? So, I think that a logical way to end my story, because it started with me leaving the house, I think that it's just going to end with me coming back and the cats acting like nothing happened while I was gone. They're going to pretend they were asleep, and just act totally innocent, like they don't know about the broken stuff or the party time. So for my end, for my my 6th picture, I'm just going to write return home, cats are sleeping. Sleeping. Okay. And so let me go through this one more time, and then I will show you what all I drew to go along with these ideas. So in the beginning, I'm just going to leave home. The cats are going to look out the window. They're going to realize that mom is gone and it is party time. They are going to have a race. They're going to break some stuff, and then I'm going to return home and they're going to be sleeping. Okay, so because there was so much to cover today, and I wanted to be really take my time with these drawings, I went ahead and I made my comic. But I left my speech bubbles blank, and so we're going to go through and write the dialogue together. But I'm going to go ahead and show you my comic, which I'm very proud of, and hopefully it'll give you guys some ideas of how to draw your own comic. So I'll take you through from the beginning to the end. Now, these comics, you're going to read it just like you would a regular piece of, piece of writing. It's going to go from left to right, and then up to down. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So you see in my first frame, just like I planned, it's just got me leaving, and now I've got to think of what I'm going to say to the cats as I'm leaving. And remember, these are the speech bubbles. You can see that they've got a little arrow by the person's head that shows that it's coming out of their mouth. And then within these speech bubbles, we are going to also put quotation marks, which I'll show you how to do. But remember, those quotation marks go at the beginning and end of any time someone talks, and that is just so the audience knows who is talking. So in this first panel, I'm gonna say, "Bye kitties, see you soon." Actually, to keep it simple, I'm just gonna say, "Bye kitties." And then the cat is just gonna say, "Meow." All right, so that is our first frame. And again, you can see that I've got the quotation marks at the beginning and end of every time someone talks. And if you need to put punctuation, the punctuation goes inside the quotation marks. All right, so once I leave, I say, "Bye kitties." What do you think is happening in this panel? Now, remember, in this one, this is where the cats are watching to see that I'm really gone. And so I think that this cat is just gonna be saying, "Yep, the coast is clear." Do you know what that means? Okay, so that's a lot, so let me write all that. It says, "Yep, coast is clear." And that's a saying that people use when nobody's gonna be watching them. They have an opportunity to sneak or to do something. You can say the coast is clear. So yep, coast is clear. And then, do you know what that means? Okay, so as you can see, I have two sentences, but I only have a quotation mark at the beginning and the end of my two sentences, because you don't need you only need quotation marks for the one at the beginning and one at the end for the whole chunk of text. Even if a character has multiple sentences, you still just put one at the beginning of the first sentence and the second at the end of the last sentence. So it says, "Yep, coast is clear. Do you know what that means?" And then in my next strip, there's actually not any words for me to write. It just says, "Party time!" And I have my quotations. And the reason that I didn't put a speech bubble on this one is because they're both saying it together. They're saying "party time" and giving a high five. And so now, what do you think that they're saying in our fourth comic panel? This one, it has two cats and one is running and the other looks a little worried. So I think what's gonna happen is the cat that's already running is gonna say, "I'll race you to the end of the hall." So he says, "I'll race you to the end of the hall." And then I think our second cat is gonna say, "Hey, no fair, you got a head start." Hey, no fair. You got a head start. Okay, so our one cat took off on a race. He says, "I'll race you to the end of the hall." Cat number two, though, says, "Hey, no fair, you got a head start." And now let's see what's going on in this next frame. We have one cat on the floor looking surprised, and another cat that looks like he just knocked something off of that table. That looks like a broken glass, which, remember, I said the cats were gonna break some stuff because cats do like to break stuff. So what do you think that this cat is gonna say as it's got an evil looking smile on its face and it's breaking glass? So I think the naughty cat is gonna say, "Oops." And then he's gonna say, "Just kidding, I did that on purpose," because knowing the cat, he probably did. So our naughty kitty goes, "Oops." And then, "Just kidding. Just kidding. That was on purpose." And the second cat looks very worried, like maybe he thinks they'll both get in trouble for it. So, oops, just kidding, that was on purpose. It's not really surprised, not really saying oops, just being silly. And so we have one more frame. This is the end of our comic. And what is happening here is I've got the door is starting to open. I've got jingle jingle, which is the sound of the keys opening the door. And our one cat is surprised. And I think this cat is going to say, quick, act like you're asleep. And then we've got our cat that's already pretending to be asleep, because these are sneaky kitties. So the cat says, quick, pretend to be asleep. Pretend you're sleeping. And the other cat has already followed that direction and is pretending to be asleep. And now I'm going to read you my whole comic from start to finish so that you guys can see it one more time. All right, so our first frame says, bye kitties, and the cat says meow. Then it says, yep, coast is clear. You know what that means. Party time! I'll race you to the end of the hall. Hey, no fair, you've got a head start. And then the glass is gonna crash and says, oops, just kidding, I did that on purpose. And then on our last frame, it says, jingle jingle, quick, pretend you're sleeping. And then we've got the cat pretending to be asleep. And that is my whole comic that I made all by myself. Oh, and I realized I forgot to tell you the name of my comic. I called it The Secret Life of Cats. That's my title. And so I hope that you guys got some good inspiration from that and got to see how to use those speech bubbles and your quotation marks and got some good ideas for how to write your own comic. I know that I had a lot of fun with this, and I hope you guys do as well. I think that I'm gonna put this on my fridge because it's such a pretty page. I really liked my drawings that I did, and so I hope that you guys feel proud of your own comic as well, and maybe you can show it to some of your friends and maybe they could give you some feedback. Maybe they'll think it's funny as well. And so yeah, that is today's activity, and by the time you've finished, you will be your very own comic book artist. That is awesome. And so yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed today's activity, and I hope to see you again for our next lesson. Bye, Stair students.